Hi everyone, it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here with a new PB&J card class. And in today's video, I am so excited to be sharing with you how you can create very simply and very easily your very own autumn kit. So I love the season of autumn. It is probably my favorite season. And I think sometimes between making Christmas cards, which seems like such a rush and we do so many, that we can sometimes not have enough time to sit and enjoy our autumn stamps. And I really wanted to be able to do that this year. And so what I did is I created for myself an autumn kit. So I have chosen autumn themed stamps that are so beautiful on their own. They're just beautifully composed and fun to paint and color with all of my favorite autumn colors. I've picked those out, threw in some stencils into my kit, and I'll tell you more about those in a minute. And that is it. And so what I was going for with all of these cards are simple. Almost all of them are nearly one layer cards, and they all follow sort of the same formula. So as I sat down to make these, all I had to do was enjoy the stamping and the coloring, and I didn't have to give much thought to the actual design of the card or a lot of time put into like lots of die cutting or cutting elements. So here are the ingredients if you want to make your own autumn kit and just really enjoy the experience. First, autumn stamps. So I like focal point images that are large enough for A2 size cards. And for me, with a project like this, new images really keep me motivated, or a mix of new and some from my stash. One medium you love, or one maybe you want to practice, and a stencil set for finishing. And I have the basics handy, which is for me is white paper, ink for stamping, and some ink blending tool with foam pads. These are the stamps that I have in my kit. These are all Penny Black's from Penny Black's newest release, Autumn Gala. There's Autumn Gala stamp right there. Autumn Masterpiece. Then I also have some transparent sets. Fall Breeze, and you'll notice on these you get some beautiful sentiments and also a couple of nicely sized focal point images. Here we have Autumn Air, and again you can see two really nice substantial focal point images, which I think just makes these so perfect for this style of stamping. This is Sunflower Harvest, a nice large image, but then also a couple others that you'll see me use to do sort of an repeated stamping. And then Autumn Boots. And oh, I love those boots. I just can't get enough of them. Now here are some other tips that I recommend or that you might want to try if you're going to make an autumn kit is to make it cozy. You could add an autumn candle to your crafty space or even hang some twinkle lights near your desk. Make a little bowl or put some Halloween treats into your kit. I just use an old photo box for my kit. Throw some of those in there. Beforehand, you could make a list of your favorite autumn theme movies to play while you're creating. Pull out the DVDs if you still do DVDs, or play some relaxing autumn type music in the background. On YouTube, I just search like autumn coffee shop jazz and it'll come up with some fun ones. And set out your kit items so that it's inviting to you and you take away any barriers that you may have to just getting started. So just make this cozy spot that you can come to even if it is just for 5, 10, 15 minutes a day. It's so nice to have it out and accessible so that you actually get it done. So what I did is I took all of those focal point stamps that I just showed you and I stamped them onto Canson 140-pound watercolor paper using Memento Toffee Crunch ink. All of the cards except for two were standard size cards, A2 4¼ by 5½ inches, but two are 5 by 7. So I did that assembly line style. I cut down all the paper and I just sat with my MISTI stamp positioning tool and stamped them all out. And then I could set up this nice cozy autumn kit that was ready for me to paint. So I am painting using Distress Ink Reinkers used as watercolors. This is one of my favorite ways to paint, and so this is what I wanted to go to for this project. Something I'm comfortable with, that I know I'm going to enjoy, that's inviting for me. So if for you that's watercolors or that's colored pencils or Copic markers, anything that you know you're going to look forward to doing, is what I recommend popping into this kit. Or if you have a medium that you just need to practice. So one thing is, I find I make tons and tons of cards, so I get a lot of practice with watercolors or using Distress Ink Reinkers as watercolors. So if you have a medium that you like, but maybe you aren't getting, you've only made a couple cards with it, don't stop there and say, oh, that didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. That's only a couple of cards. So this is a great chance too, without a lot of pressure, because it's just one layer cards. You didn't put a lot into the card. If you paint one and it's so-so or you just don't like it, you can just throw it away. It's just paper, and do another one. Or maybe when you stamp everything ahead of time, maybe you want to stamp it 2 or 3 times so you've already got it ready. Maybe a little practice one to try out different colors, and then another one that you plan to use on the card. But I think the main thing is just take the pressure off, just enjoy the process, and having things ready to go and enticing. Now, I haven't talked much about my technique here for painting. There's lots of painting here within this video, and I will link for you down in the YouTube description box another video where I go slow, I do it real time, and I talk through all of the basics that I use each time I paint with Distress Ink Reinkers used as watercolors. Down in the YouTube description box below too, I will list and link all of the penny black supplies that I'm using. And I will also list all of the other supplies I'm using. So if you want to know what paper, what colors of Distress Ink Reinkers I'm using, what colors of little markers here that I'm using, my paintbrush, all of that is listed for you down in the YouTube description box below. So I went ahead and I just painted all of those leaves, and now I'm just using this Arteza TwiMarker, just the fine tip, to trace over the branches. And then I did pick up my paintbrush again, and that is a water soluble marker, so I can go over the top of that just ever so lightly. There's not hardly any water on my brush, and just sort of blend that out. It gives just a little bit of a shadow, and I think it just looks kind of fun. Now I had all of these stamped, and then whenever I sat down to paint, then I could just paint them. And I didn't do any finishing of each card until the end. So I did kind of work in batches, which for me just again limits the decisions, which for me can be a barrier to even getting started. So I just knew, just sit down and paint and have fun. And honestly, if you never finish the cards or you don't get them sent out, if you enjoyed the painting, that's okay too. Or if you painted 5 of them and mailed out 1, that's okay too. And I think too it's fun to have these if you don't get them in the mail. If you're going anywhere for Thanksgiving, you could use them, just bring them with you or send them afterward as a thank you card. So this image is so fun to color. Now this is a standard size card, so you can see it is a nice, great focal point image. You don't have to do anything else but just stamp that on there and have fun coloring it. I'm continuing to paint with my Distress Reinkers used as watercolors. Just layering up that color. On the birds, you did see me, I had a little Faber-Castell PITT Artist pen, which is a waterproof marker. I just went over their eyes. And I'll use it there on the beak just a little bit. And then my favorite thing to color on these is these boots, because you can change the whole look of the design by what color you do the boots. It really completely changes the look. So I love turquoise, so I had to mix some blues and greens here to get a turquoise boot, but I also tried painting them in just a light tan, which then the foliage, the autumn foliage at the top really stands out. So it's fun to play around with these. If you were making a kit, you could even just put 1 stamp in there and stamp it multiple times and try lots of different color variations with it as well. Here we're going to get these pumpkins. And with the Reinkers, I just put the color, I dip my paintbrush into the Reinker ink, and that's going to have the highest concentration of ink. I put that where I want it to be darkest. Then I rinse off my brush in my cup of water, pat it on a paper towel, and I can go back and blend out that darker color. If it ever gets too dark on me, I can go in with a pretty dry brush, so it's been patted several times on the paper towel, and I can lift some color up as well. And again, if you want to see that slower and with more explanation, I'll link that video for you down in the description box below. So I'd love to know, what is your favorite season? And do you really celebrate it with your hobby, with your stamping? Autumn is mine, but I sometimes feel like my autumn cards get rushed. So this year, I just really made it a priority to enjoy the process and celebrate the season that I love and just get into it with my hobby. There you can see I'm just adding a little bit more darker color, adding more dark color on top. I colored the other pumpkin more of a yellow. Now don't be intimidated by it, how much foliage is up here on the top. For me, the smaller it is, the less shading I typically do with it, because it's the detail and the shapes that will make it look finished, not necessarily lots and lots of shading. So you can see here, I'm not getting too technical. I put one light yellow color on, a little bit of orange, and then I'm just blending that out. You could even really paint that top portion all like just solid colors for each different item or different flower or leaf. I'll just show you a little bit here on these different sections. Just going to lift a little bit of that color. And drop in a touch of red up here, just kind of tracing over those lines, but I'm okay if it sort of blends and bleeds out a little bit. And then this brush just has water that's been pat on the paper towel, so it is not too wet. Move in here for some of these leaves. Now I felt like I had enough sort of autumn colors going on here, but you could certainly also do these leaves, not do them green and do them in even more autumn colors. And I've stamped these in that Toffee Crunch Memento ink because I feel like it gives a no-line watercolor look without it like having to strain your eyes, and you still can see some of the details stamped there, like the veining on the leaves. But these are also beautiful if you just want to stamp them in black. In fact, if you don't want to do a lot of shading, you can absolutely stamp these in black, or VersaFine Smoky Gray is also really nice because it's not quite as stark as the black. And then you really don't have to do any shading because your shapes and the image is completely defined by the stamping, and you can color everything in just flat. And the illustration on these stamps is so strong that it will look beautiful even if you don't do a bunch of shading, if that's not your thing. So I've got just one more flower here to do. I'm just dropping in some of that color where I want it to be darkest. Just kind of where a petal would be going underneath another petal. And now it's mostly just water on my brush, and I'm going to go in and blend that. And then after I did that, I realized it was just too red. It was blending in with all those leaves around it. So I'm going to go ahead here and add some orange on top. That's why I think watercolor is so forgiving. You can usually just keep layering up colors till you're happy with it. And I'll get a little bit here on these flowers in the center. Now here is that Arteza TwiMarker, and I didn't mind using this one at this time because it is a water soluble marker, but I'm done painting, so I'm not going to be having a wet paintbrush near it that is going to cause it to bleed. Now on these I grabbed a colored Arteza TwiMarker, and again everything exact colors are listed below, and I'm just tracing right over the top of that with the fine tip. And it is a super fine tip. So these have two tips. One is more of a brush tip and one is fine. It's really handy for that kind of detail. And then I did put a little bit onto those little berries because I felt like they were a little too light. So now I'm just going in with my water that activates that marker ink because it is water soluble, and it just looks like I painted that on there. So here is what everything looked after I had stamped and painted everything. So these are the two 5x7 cards. And then all the rest are 4¼ by 5½ inches. So at this point, it's kind of like round 2 with the kit. So the first round is stamping and painting or coloring, and then the next is round 2. Here's where I stamped the sunflowers and some of those sort of secondary images from those sets around the outside. And don't worry when you stamp if it just looks like, what am I going to do with this? That is where the stencils are going to come in. So this is our stencil kit background basics, and I wanted to show you all of them because I'm not using them all, but it's such a great value. The stencils you see at the top are all standard size, card size, 4¼ by 5½ inches, and at the bottom they are 5x7 inches. So you also get the inner pieces and of course the outer stencil pieces. So there's lots you can do with those, and I'm going to show you some of that now. So I'm working on the Wendy Vecchi Make Art STAYtion. It is magnetic, so you can use this to hold your stencils in place while you're adding your ink. If you don't want to mess around with putting like removable tape on the stencils, it works great. I'll also show you how you can use them without this, but it is just a fun tool that I decided to give a try here. And I'm just picking out the stencils, and I'm going to show you several, placing them over that image that I've stamped and painted. I'm sure that it's completely dry, and I'm using an ink blending tool and a foam pad. I'm starting off of the edge and working my way on in a circular motion. If the magnets start to get in my way a little bit, I just slide them over. You can vary your color. So here I did that brown along that right hand side, and then over on this side I'm adding some blue. And wherever the image is, I do try not to go over that too heavily. So I sort of don't go right over top of the image. And I like it when the image that I've stamped and painted extends beyond the stencil, which you'll see here. And look at that. Now that card is like instantly finished. That's what I love about these stencils. I'm going to do that again here with this image, mostly focusing my inking on the corners. And I will remove that, and there you go, another look at that. Here I'm using one of the stencils with a circle, and I'm going to concentrate most of the inking just along the top. So again, starting off of the edge, working along the edge of the stencil and lightly working my way onto the card. This is so fun. I mean, I just love that you can just stamp, do a little stenciling, and your cards are done. It just doesn't take a lot of thought, but you just get to enjoy the process, I think. And wow, look at that. Every time I'm amazed. Now here's where I'm using one of those inner pieces. So I'm going to lay that on my card. I was just kind of eyeballing if it was in the center. And then I realized, oh, I could just use the outer piece to make sure. So just a little tip there. You might have figured it out faster than I did. And then here now I'm going to apply the ink up towards the stencil, and you can see now the ink is going on the outside. So with all of the stencils in the kit, you could also do this. You could lay the circle down and ink around the outside or just the top of the circle. If your stencil moves, it's really easy to just slide it back in place. And for this, I tried not to go over, especially the yellow sunflowers, too much. I did a little bit, but I think it's okay. And again, all the colors I'm using will be listed for you down in that YouTube description box below. Here I'm just focusing on those corners, just for a little variation. And look at that. I mean, it's just a totally different look, but I think that is so fun. Now here is the 5x7 card. So I'm just following that same process. And there you go. And then again for this one, I'm actually using one of the 5x7 stencils with a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card because I wanted a bigger circle. So you can do that. There's no rules about that. And that's where these magnets actually come in very handy, because then, you know, it's not as hard to sort of try and tape it around to the back, and you can really see where it is positioned. And I did a light brown and then just a little bit darker brown in a few places. There you go. And to clean off my stencils when I'm done, I just spray them with water and wipe them off. If you're using like these archival inks, it can stain them a little bit, but it won't affect it the next time you use the stencil. So this one, I'm using the 5x7 stencil on a standard size card, a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card, and I'm actually offsetting the circle because I wanted to make this birch tree look like it's kind of started and ended at the circle. I think that makes sense of that stamped in the middle of the card. I did a little bit of blues and greens towards the right hand of the trunk, and then here towards the left I'm going to do the browns. And then I'll put a littlest bit of Toffee Crunch ink here on the right hand side. And then this is another 5x7 card. And here's just another way you can do that. You can use some painter's tape to just hold it right onto the card. So since the stencil is size 5x7, or the others are this 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, you can also hold them on just like this. You don't have to have any special tools to do that, but it's just fun sometimes. Here I did a little touch of yellow on one corner, and then more tan Toffee Crunch over here. So I had pale ochre for the yellow, and then some Toffee Crunch. Just a little bit of Acorn brown in the corners. So that's another thing, just adding a little bit darker color on the corners also is very nice. You can see how that finishes off that rectangle. So here they are, all the finished cards. All I had to do after I did the inking was pick out sentiments, and it's actually quite easy then to find a place for your sentiments once you've added that stenciling. It's like the card starts making the decisions for itself. Those were the two 5x7s, and here are the standard size cards. This one I wrapped with some twine and just embellished with a die cut. That's as fancy as I got with these. And then the rest here just have sentiments added to them. These are just single panels of watercolor paper, which I would then adhere to a standard size note card. You can see there, especially like with those circles that have been stenciled, how it really does give you a great place where the sentiment can go. Or like on this card, there was only one place left, so that's where the sentiment went. You can layer on die cuts for your sentiments as well, and that stenciling will just give them a home. So I hope today's video inspired you to do some autumn stamping, maybe even make your own autumn kit with just some stamps and some stencils. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also connect with Penny Black on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well as our website and our blog, and I'll link all of those for you down in the YouTube description box below. Happy stamping!